I just can't believe it's happening. Like, what the hell? This is insane. And so, I mean, and it's, the other thing I think too, it's so strategically foolish on the part of the college. I don't even know what to say about it. I can't believe it's happening. It's beyond comprehension to me. And so, and that makes me think, well, is it just me? Because people tweet out at me, well, Peterson, you always seem to be in trouble with one authority or another. Maybe it's just you. It's like, where there's smoke, there's fire, And I can understand why people think that way. And if something happens to you repeatedly, you have to start wondering if it's you or the situation. But the way that I'm dealing with this, the way that we've dealt with this as a family right from the beginning, is just to make it all public, right? And to allow light to be shone on the situation and to derive our conclusions mostly as a consequence of watching the broad public response. And I'm trying to do exactly the same thing here. Like, I'm a very guilt-prone person, and when someone comes after me with accusations, I'm very likely to assume that there's a core of truth in them. And but I also believe that I have the right to defend myself. And one of the ways of doing that in this situation, this is why we're having this conversation, is like, I don't have faith that I can expect fair treatment at the hands of this board. And I also don't have any faith, partly because I've talked to a bunch of my legal friends, I don't have a lot of faith in the Canadian judiciary. I mean, people have told me, law professors have told me now that they see continually Canadian courts who are extremely activist in nature dispensing completely with such niceties as common law precedent when they're rendering their judgments. And so,
yikes.
I certainly don't believe that the College of Psychologists will treat me fairly. I have seen them treat very few people fairly. And I don't believe that even if we push this forward on the judicial front, which is our plan at the moment, like implementing a challenge to their ruling, for example, on Canadian constitutional grounds, because at least in principle, we have the right to free speech and freedom of conscience in this country, although I don't really think we do. Yeah, in principle. Yeah, the protection has turned out with the Canadian Charter of Rights is an unbelievably weak and poorly written document that provides Canadians with almost no protection for their rights whatsoever. It was definitely a giant step backwards in relationship to the English common law tradition. And we're now subject to an extraordinarily badly written document whose fundamental propositions can be superseded by the government anytime they think there's a sufficiently dire state of affairs. So I'm making it public, and people can decide for themselves. I'll release every bit of correspondence between the college and me over the next few days, redacting out the identifiers. And, I've been...
On your website?
I've been ambivalent. Yeah. I've been ambivalent about that too, because part of me thinks, well, these people who are complaining to me, they shouldn't get to do it anonymously and hidden away from any consequences of their accusations. But I believe that I'm legally and hypothetically, ethically required to maintain privacy even in the face of these, what are essentially legal attacks. And like I said, I'm ambivalent about that because I don't see why I should be made public in such a manner without my accusers having to bear the weight of some responsibility for weaponizing this bureaucracy and against me. Now, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Well, it's because
I'm not going to do it.
It's because you've been harming people on Twitter and they're saving people from your harm.
Yeah, that's the rationale, exactly. Well, and it's also been difficult to formulate a defense because I'm not even sure, and this is, I think, part and parcel either of the ignorance of the college or their incompetence. I can't even tell what I'm being accused of. So, for example, one of the complaints submitted as evidence the entire transcript of my 3-hour discussion with Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
And so, and I said all sorts of horrible things on that. Yeah, I know, everything this man ever said.
That entire podcast was harmful.
Yeah. So how do you defend yourself against that? I think they were objecting primarily to my comments about climate change models and the apocalyptic conclusions that have been derived from them, and complaining that I'm not a scientist, and bloody well I am a scientist, by the way. I have 100 scientific publications, and that's a lot. and I can read a scientific paper and understand it, unlike those who are accusing me or the people who sit on the college, by the way. And so I'm perfectly capable of understanding a scientific paper. And I believe, and many scientists who are very solid scientists, like Richard Franzen of MIT, who has a pedigree that's absolutely impeccable, agree with everything I said. And so, now that doesn't mean it's right. That's not my claim. But my claim is that I'm not going off, with a half-loaded gun here, and I don't say things lightly. But anyways, it's not easy to figure out exactly what I'm being accused of. And so, so the upshot is essentially that I either submit myself to this media retraining program
Absolutely
with their
not.
experts. Yeah, well, that's not happening. There's just not a chance that will ever happen. I can't imagine a circumstance under which I would be willing to do that. I mean, I can't imagine how I would possibly sit through such a thing.
That sounds
somebody
awful.
said I should just record it and put it on.
No way.
Online.
You wouldn't be able to stand yourself. You'd last 30 seconds in there.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'd like to put any educator through the horrible process of having to come and try to re-educate me either, because I can't see how that would go particularly well for them.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm not sure who would end up re-educated in a situation like that. But I have my doubts that it would be me, because people have been trying to re-educate me for a long time, and it really hasn't worked that well. So, and that's generally because I don't say things that I haven't investigated right to the bottom. So, in any case, it's very stressful, this, and I've spent, hundreds of hours just trying to organize the arguments that have been marshaled against me and understand what the hell they are. Part of the process that's punitive, and the bloody activists know this, is that as soon as you have complaints levied against you, you're basically snowed under by the obligations of what's essentially a serious lawsuit. And, you might say, well, it's not a lawsuit, it's just an investigation. It's like, well, the college itself suggests that once one of these investigations is levied, that the person being investigated acquire legal counsel. So they know bloody well right that this is essentially a quasi-criminal investigation, or at least it has that element of process about it. And you see this on Twitter too. As I've made this public, there are good thinkers everywhere who are saying, I got what I deserved, even though it isn't obvious exactly why I deserved it. And are perfectly happy to see this happening. And, that shows you what kind of motivations a large percentage of the population has.